2024, I wanted to bring you back to the tree of life. And, they're always talking about there shall be signs in the heavens. Now, that could be interpreted several ways, where you're looking for a giant comet to come through. You're looking for another planet to become more luminous, which I would anticipate as well. As we get into later 2024, the planets are going to start glowing more. They're going to get brighter, and they're not going to be able to explain it. More electric current into the system means a higher vibration means more light glowing. Signs in the skies. It's been given to us time immemorial. This tree of life shows us exactly where we sit. This marks the beginning of the cycle, in my opinion. Now, obviously, when they said signs in the skies, I don't think they were talking about one giant event. I think they were talking about this right here, this alignment that could be measured, and it would be so significant that it could not be denied that it was the sign. And welcome back. I want you to just sit back and relax. I'm trying to explain the best is these natural overlapping cycles, and the reason our world is suddenly taking a hard twist, whatever direction you think it might go, left, right, center, up, down. We got the comet Nishimura inbound. This will be the last night you can see it. But generally with Chinese mythologies, when comets arrive, that's a bad omen. So right here, this first slide, what are we allowed to see? That's truly the question over the last several thousand years. I mean, what are we allowed to see about our history, our economy, repeating cycles, controllers of finance and society itself? Same powers have been controlling money, finance, in the direction of society since the Sumerian time, 7,000 years ago. So I think it was an implanted ruler class on the planet. And we see it again and again. So this is a first of its kind here. This is the back of King Tut. Usually you see the sarcophagus and you see the face and it's laying there. This is the first time they've released the reverse image of that solid gold headdress. What strikes me is the kundalini going down the spine. It looks almost like a series of transistors or something coming up. They understood the electrical nature of the body, the electrical nature of the planet, and the electrical nature of the solar system and how that interconnects with the spiral arm of our galaxy and these changes that are forecastable, mappable. Now we're right back at it again. And I've referenced this chart before, and we're starting to finally get into the effects of this, what will be at its greatest intensity right here on this chart, October 23rd through the 25th of 2024. Let's take a good look at this because you see the Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune as perceived from our geocentric view, which is the Earth. From the Earth looking out to space, it appears as a square in the sky. And then we have different variants of that Earth in the center between the two magnetic fields, the sun on the backside, second magnetic field in front of us. So if you go to this website here, it's called theplanetstoday.com. Incredibly interesting site. It only has one function, just one. It shows you when planets start to connect electrically, electromagnetically, energetically, gravitationally. When they start to connect together, they turn purple. So if we rewind the clock just a little bit to the last days of August, that's on the left side there, you'll see that Uranus and Jupiter were inactive with any other planets around. Now Venus and Mercury were connecting with Saturn, and a lot of times when the Earth rolls through that, it'll get quite large earthquakes. So if we move forward a little bit in time to September 5th, which is the chart on the right there, you'll suddenly start to see that Uranus and Eris, which is a subplanet, but Uranus starts to glow, meaning, uh-oh, or rejoicing, yes, I'm so excited it is, starting to interconnect with the other planets. This is a chance for us to break out of the fright zone into the freedom zone. Truly, by the end of this, you will see why this world is being controlled. The elite are terrified of us swinging into this magnetic field because the ability to manifest during this time is going to be something that has not been witnessed in thousands of years.
Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Marjorie's free webinar provides you with the tools and knowledge that you need to thrive during these difficult times. You'll learn Marjorie's 3-part system for quickly producing vegetables, eggs, meat, and much more. Go to homegrown2030.com. That's homegrown2030.com, or click on that link in the description box below. And now on with the video. So if we come over to September 9th, what happened? All of the planets are going now. This magnetic field state will stay in play through 2026. This is the beginning of it. It just began. So now the beginning of the intensity, magnetism and electromagnetism, it doesn't work in a slow fashion. It bam, it just hits and it's on. Now we're not in the middle of the exact field yet, but if we come out to the 15th where we are today, I grabbed this just before the show today. Almost everything's interconnecting. Mercury as well. Now it's going to swing out, and the 4 gas giants will stay electrically connected as the other planets come in and come out of the flow. So as you roll through the charts, once you start to see 2 or 3 lines of, or 2 or 3 planets like Mercury and Venus, that's the electromagnetic line. Once the Earth's passed through that, you're going to know that we're going to get hit with earthquakes and volcanoes. Easy to use this site. And I encourage you, when there's gigantic events, come back here and then see where the Earth sits in terms of magnetism. And here, when we come out, this is my forecast for the end of the month here, just based on what should occur when we're in the center of the field, October of 2024. Now, currently, as we swing through, the Earth is going to be, quote unquote, in the center of this evolving magnetic field, the second magnetic field, right around the 29th of September, in another couple weeks. Now, my opinion for this would be larger volcanism and bigger earthquakes. More extreme weather, like off the hook, unexplainable, gigantic hailstones weighing 5 pounds kind of things coming down. This is going to be a twist for everything you've known on our planet. The atmosphere, the electrical conductivity of our atmosphere. Space debris probably won't come in until we get on the backside of the sun by ourselves, when all the gravitational bodies are behind us pulling things in. So April would be a big one for me to look at for space debris coming in based on this evolving magnetic field. But just in a very general sense, you can kind of move the planet forward and back in time. This model only goes 30 days in advance. Obviously, you can't go that much further out. But we should be right, you know, in the center of that magnetic field at the end of the month. So look for larger than normal events of earthquakes and volcanoes at the end of this month. Now, also mud floods, things emanating from the earth like mud and earth cracks, bridges falling apart, bridges ripping from their banks. This will be kind of an indicator of things to come. This magnetic field is going to intensify every day from this point forward. It'll reach the max in, you know, end of next year, and then it'll take another whole year for it to dissipate back into pretty much where we're about at now. Another year or so, 2026, and then we should be out of this tug. So between now and the end of 2025 into 2026, this is the time that a lot of things are going to begin to change. Perception of human wakefulness is going to change. The way our brains are magnetically structured is going to change. It's going to seem like the planet is going insane, and it's going to appear as if we are in the end days, which I don't think we are yet. I think this is a precursor to it. That's just my own thought here, because it does seem like we're ripping through this veil of reality here. And this is truly the best image I could find for what I expect the world to move through in the next 24 months. There's this perception of what reality is, stuff, hard things, whatever things are in the world in front of you. But when you rip through that veil, there's something behind it. And I think a lot more of that is going to begin to happen to people. How will they deal with it? Well, that's one thing unknown. So as we come into 2024, I wanted to bring you back to the tree of life. And, you know, they're always talking about there shall be signs in the heavens. Now, that could be interpreted several ways, where you're looking for a giant comet to come through. You're looking for another planet to become more luminous, which I would anticipate as well. As we get into later 2024, the planets are going to start glowing more. They're going to get brighter, and they're not going to be able to explain it. Well, if you got transiting magnetism from our star through the rest of the solar system and our planets, obviously that has a potential difference that can move through. Something could glow more. More electric current into the system means a higher vibration, means more light glowing. Signs in the skies. It's been given to us time immemorial. This tree of life shows us exactly where we sit. This marks the beginning of the cycle, in my opinion. Now, obviously, when they said signs in the skies, I don't think they were talking about one giant event. I think they were talking about this right here, this alignment that could be measured, and it would be so significant that it could not be denied that it was the sign. We'll come back to more of these through the talk here. But if you look at Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Jupiter, they make that square there between the lower self, which would be the Earth. And then if we look at Atma, the ego, that's the sun. And you'll notice Venus is interestingly off in the exact same position, Deha, which you would see right here on our celestial map as well. So the mapping in the beginning of the cycle, see, this is the beginning of it. So where's the end? We'd have to stretch out in time and try to find the end matchup of this. This marks the beginning of it, but where's the ending? That's my next area of research, because clearly we can see that this matches. So it's going to have to map and match with Nefesh and Guf at the bottom eventually. So where would those planets transit to still have those four gas giants? It puts us out around 2031-ish. It's almost an inverse of this, as above, so below, which is incredibly interesting, because if you reverse that, the planets are on the left quadrant, but still, if you spin the model, you'll start to see that these planets do line up once again, 2031. Now, when I'm talking about extremes and things that are inbound here, the uptick, for a better term, is going to be biblical. There's no other way to describe it. And way back in the beginning of my channel, you know, the way that the forecasts were moving out with so many others, astrophysicists who I was learning from, and, you know, just like a sponge trying to learn as much as I could from them. The effects of this on our jet streams and cloud cells will be even more amplified. And if cosmic rays come in at higher levels as we descend into solar minimum, cosmic rays create more cloud cover, which creates more rain. And we also have the water vapor from the Hunga Tonga eruption in the atmosphere still for another 3 years. So you start to add all these variables on top of each other. And originally, when I would see a story where it was a month worth of rain in a single event, that was my starting. Okay, it's a month. Eventually, it's going to be 6 months. Eventually, you're going to see a year worth of rain. And then after that, at some point, unknown, you're going to see years, plural, worth of rain in a single day. Well, we're at that point now. So it's better and a little bit easier to adjust the timeline, because knowing what will be in that magnetic field puts us a year and a half out to these amplified years of something in a matter of days. So this is in Greece, and I don't know if any of you have been following the floods, because I know most people are focused on the Libyan floods at the moment and the dam breaks there. Greece had the biggest floods ever recorded. And, you know, when they say that, that's like a big statement, because you're going back to the Parthenon and we're going way back. That's thousands and thousands of years. So Greek authorities coming out saying it's the largest floods ever recorded in Greece. You know, Greece has a long history like Rome does. We're going way back, thousands of years, plural. And so according to their statements, these are the biggest floods in thousands of years. 3 years worth of rain in 2 days. You know, it would not surprise me if we were to see 5 years or 10 years of rain just before this magnetic field intensity at its peak. It would not surprise me at all to see 5 years worth of rain in a day. And this is where we start to get into the mud flood stories, population migration, destruction of infrastructure. Nothing will hold. And see, this is where it makes me think just a moment here. If the elite understand this knowledge, they would also understand where the most damage would be on which continents. And you would also understand on the inverse where the least amount of damage would be in some locations, higher altitude, off coast, not in an estuary or a floodplain, an alluvial fan, nothing like that. So perhaps they've already mapped this out into quote unquote safe zones. And I hate using that word because everything's so safe space, But if you had mapped out where areas on the planet would be completely destroyed, partially destroyed, a great percentage destroyed, and then you had all the safe place, then you would obviously want to move your assets there because you want to be in control after this event is finished. So to control a monetary system backed by gold and silver, you're going to want to move all that out of, you're not going to want your gold and silver covered in 5-10 feet of mud, possibly unrecoverable. You're going to want it out of that area. And, you know, it's just quirky that all of these shifts of economy and gold and silver and gold-backed currencies and the BRICS and everything's just being shuffled around the planet right now. It's a great excuse to give cover for the shuffling because you can't come out to a planet and say, by the way, in about a year and a half, we're going to go ripping through this magnetic field. Many of you won't survive. Most of our infrastructure is going to get damaged, but we'd like you to continue to pay taxes. Not going to work. So obfuscate. This is the perfect excuse. I just had this mind-blown, idea just last week. It just kind of came. There was a postcard in my mind. This is it. They're moving everything because they already know where the damage is going to be. So when we look at this kind of deep flooding, and we're talking hundreds of square miles here, this is insane. How much water came down and how much area was flooded to the rooftops. Those are homes right there. It's not a little flood where you're walking through knee deep. This is up to the roofs as far as you can see out of airplane windows. These rescuers going in on the choppers and actually the air overflights, literally as far as you can see to the horizon is this in all the directions. I'm like, whoa, this is something. And then, of course, we're going to get the mud slides and mud floods and debris slides and debris flows coming out of this at the same time. And these images are too innumerable to even continue to, there's thousands of them to look at. And it's just really, you sit there and you scratch your head, you're like, how can this much rain come down in one area? Now, again, cover for it. Oh, it's geoengineering. Devil's advocate, I understand they're trying to engineer the weather. I get it. I see it up here. They're jetting, contrails, persistent contrails, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering programs. I see it every day. But that would be a great cover to explain this, that they geoengineered the storms to punish somebody for not wanting to go along with the current agenda, whatever. But in reality, it would be a natural effect that could be amplified upon. But then when you point back to it, oh no, that was nature, that was global warming, that was partially geoengineered. They're never going to tell you about the magnetic field in the outer solar system. It all does kind of do a Rubik's Cube on this here. China, another one. Their dams are nearly overtopping. The water's like splashing over the retaining wall that's probably 15 feet above the actual dam itself of concrete. I mean, they've had dam collapse after release, and just China is in a world of hurt food production wise. They flooded their fields. This is Beijing. And look at the damage again. You start to see repeating patterns of damage of like how much water came through to push those cars up and leave all that debris flow. This is a massive amount of flooding. And the last time I was on the program here, we looked at Beijing and the downtown central business district, but there's a lot more images coming out finally about the flood damage. And if we look at Hong Kong, 137-year rain record just broken this about 5-6 days ago. And again, you start to see Hong Kong, you got the main city right down there in Kowloon, but then once you get off Kowloon and you go into the outer territories or, the new territories out there, you start to see, a little bit more village-esque type for a better term, but still for us, it's a major population area. But to see this coming out of the mountains there and the streets, Hong Kong, And then downtown was just a flood zone too. They had to close an enormous amount of everything because the underpasses there, they couldn't drain them out fast enough. I mean, you can't tell me that this isn't like 5 or 6 continents all happening at the same time. There's something far more than geoengineering going on here to cause this. Now, Saudi Arabia having massive floods in the deserts right now, along with Oman and Yemen. Some of the driest places on the planet. They got water geysers coming out of the desert, which is another thing I want to touch on next program is the huge amount of geysers that have suddenly started water being pushed out of the desert, which matches up with the Quran and quite a few of the verses there talking about the future and when the desert becomes green again and when the geysers start and when the wells refill. And there's a huge amount of talk and prophecy about the deserts becoming green again. Well, how do you start making geysers? You need to have pressure on the earth. The electromagnetic fields would push the crust. Of course it would. So if you're pushing water out, you could also push mud out and sand. There's your mud flood. Those of you who like Tartaria, that explains it. There's a trigger mechanism for the mud flood. And Shanghai, China, also not immune. That's on the left side. So Hong Kong getting record floods, biggest 137 years. Shanghai, Beijing, the entire country's flooded. They lost most of their crops. They'll still get some yields, but they lost a majority of it. Just it's still 10, 12 feet underwater. Even if corn is the highest it can possibly grow, it's a lake. You can't even see the corn sticking up, and that's usually about good 7, 8 feet. They have lost so much produce. And I wanted to roll you through the video here. Check this one out. This also comes from China right here, that they're having upwelling, earth upwelling against the roads, and the rocks are actually pushing through the asphalt. And this is a phenomenon that we're seeing and being documented over there. The road's not sinking. The pressure from the rocks being pushed up against the hardened road is what you're seeing here, along with obviously some heat, and you're seeing cracks. That's Earth's subsistence. This is going to be seen more and more as we march forward into this second magnetic field. This is just the beginning of it. So when I'm talking about destroyed infrastructure, these rocks are being pushed from beneath through our infrastructure. So you start to see many a different, and going back to Saudi Arabia for just a moment before I head on the break here, check out the water coming down, the floods. I was saying there was floods in the deserts, and this is the kind of rainfall coming off where waterfalls are starting to flow again. And this is out in the empty quarter as you're getting toward Oman. They have a series of like these high cliffs out there, and especially in Yemen. In Oman, you get this sort of cliff-like structure the closer you get to the coast. But this kind of rainfall and flooding is turning deserts into lakes. Again, I don't know how many times the Bible references this either, about floods in the end times, giant hailstones that will pound villages to splinters. We are in it right now, all predicated in this second magnetic field is the trigger for it. So again, you have to be a government now, be the government of the planet, be World Health Organization, be the United Nations, be whatever you want to be, and try to deflect your way and excuse your way to explain every single one of these amplified events that are so far over anything that man-made could be responsible for, by orders of magnitude above that. Now you have to explain away to the global populace why this is happening without scaring them. I mean, you need a little fear so you can push agendas and collect more tax money and keep the system going and the rule of law and these sort of things, move and go to work and global shipping. Oh, wait, it's shutting down because the Panama Canal's closed. Just never stops. You start to see now it's just like that last Jenga piece being pulled. We're going to talk a little more about this when we come back from the break, and I have some more planets for you and more ancient history to dovetail right into that.